My girlfriend wanted something to keep her chapstick from falling off the bedside table. I wanted to build a Pokemon. This was the compromise. I'm Kevin, and this is my Victreebel chapstick holder. I'll show you exactly how I made this, but be warned, a lot went wrong, so admire it before I point out all my mistakes. The first step was designing this, which I made way more complicated than it needed to be. I use OpenSCAD, which is a script-based modeler. It's great for making technical parts, but not a great choice for something like this. I knew that going in, but I'm a sucker for a challenge. I made most of this with a bunch of for loops, meaning I told the computer to repeat some steps a bunch of times. As an example, these leaves on the side are basically just heart shapes. I told the computer to cut them into slices and adjust each slice up and down using a sine function, and voila, it looks like a curving leaf. Make the slices thinner and it starts to look even better. Most of the pieces were printed separately so they'd be easier to sand and finish, but this bit of stem that connects the body to the top leaf is the exception. I made this to hang off of the knob of my bedside table. If you want it to hang off of something else, you just need to replace this one piece. I also added registration marks to each piece. All I had to do was put a bit of paperclip in there and each piece was guaranteed to be centered. A lot went right with the design, but a lot also went wrong. Here are the top 3. First, I forgot to taper the tail. I meant to, but I didn't realize I'd missed it until I was painting. Second, I should have realized the shape of the body was problematic. It was a pain to get in there and get the supports out, and I couldn't really sand or paint it. I couldn't get a good shot of it with the camera, but if you look at it from the right angle, you can tell I couldn't paint the front half. Third, I kind of messed up this bit of stem that hooks over the knob. It fits on it, but not over it. To attach this, I have to unscrew the knob, fit this over it, and then screw the knob back on. The sanding was a pain. After a round of rough sanding, I applied some wood filler to smooth it out. Most of these parts, especially these leaves, were oddly shaped and easy to break. Sanding took way more time and energy than I expected. That's why you see my hands shaking so much. I came to hate this part of the stem on the back. I thought it would be a fun challenge, but it turned out to just be a pain. I ended up threading a bit of sandpaper behind the stem and pulling it back and forth like I was flossing. What's about to happen was a great plan with a terrible execution. I planned to paint the leaves and the body separately and then glue them together and touch up the joins. The painting went fine, but gluing was an issue. This leaf became my nemesis. There were issues with the printing and the surfaces weren't quite flush, so it kept breaking off. Maybe it wouldn't have been an issue if I was using a thicker adhesive, like a 2-part epoxy, but I used super glue for most of my prints. Eventually, I cleaned up the joint with a knife and used a ton of glue, and it seems to have worked. Now this looks pretty good, right? Wrong. I didn't realize it at the time, but I'd used the wrong color. So before I get into this, I want to blame the coronavirus. I ran out to buy paint for this project just as a stay-at-home order was issued. I glanced at the reference image, but I got it horribly wrong. I thought that the body and leaves were green and just the tail was olive, so I only got a tube of green paint. Later, I realized the tail and body were olive, but by then it was too late. It was a cringy mistake to make, although you're going to see it wasn't the cringiest of the project, but it was quick to fix. I mixed some olive paint and redid everything in just a few coats. The real issue was the eyes. The reference image shows the eyes with this fine black outline. After painting the whites of the eyes, I decided to use this pen to outline them. It was not my best idea. The ink ran into the paint and created these terrible lines. At this point, I panicked and barely took any pictures or recordings, so bear with me. I tried painting over the ink, but didn't realize how it would interact with the new paint. With every fresh coat, the ink liquefied again, so now my lines were ugly and blurry. After many coats of paint, I got the eyes somewhat fixed. But I had a new problem. Since I didn't have a tube of olive paint, I had to mix it every time I needed some. The batch I mixed while cleaning up the eyes was lighter than the original coat of olive, and it ended up looking something like this. After several minutes of swearing, I mixed up a new batch of olive paint, which is what you're seeing now, and redid everything, so it was a uniform color. It could be better, but I didn't want to push my luck and continue to mess with it. I could start from scratch and probably do a much better job, but I got what I wanted out of the project. I learned a lot, had fun, and now my girlfriend has someplace to store her chapstick. If you want to make one, I put a link to the files in the description. If you want to support the channel, then like and subscribe. I've got more projects with their own new and amusing mistakes in the works.